Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome to Wamen Hour on the Road. And it's a very special episode because it is our centenary edition, episode 100, for which I was planning something special. And instead, we're just going back to basics. I'm not even at my lap under the stairs. I'm on holiday at the moment. So we're just going to do a quick one so I can get back to relaxing. And tonight with me for our 100th episode is someone who's been with us from episode 1 to talk about the Witan, where we first met 2 years ago. Welcome, Birdie.
Good evening. It's lovely to be back. I feel like I haven't been on for a while as well, so I feel like this is a momentous stream, being the 100th one, and I kind of disappeared for about a month, so it's good to be back.
Comfy, I call it. Comfy Birdie stream. And I wanted you on because you've been at the Witan. I didn't get to go to this one. I think as these events continue to roll on every year, there's going to be some kind of badge for being someone who's been to all of them. So you're beating me in that regard. So get a completely clean record, I think. Although you'd have to be like some kind of super duper star to be someone present at the right before I joined Unpopular Opinions as a sort of regular panelist. There was a meetup literally like the week before where I think Rose of Dawn and Academic Agent and a few other people, a few viewers met up with them. So if you went to that as well as all of the subsequent Witans, I think you need to be a kind of sort of platinum tier loyal attendant.
Yeah.
But,
I wasn't at that one, I have to admit. I've been to all the Witans, but I have to admit I've not been to any of the sort of adjoining events and the smaller ones, because they're usually in really random times. I have to admit they kind of just sneak up on you, whereas the Witan, as it's the bigger event, we can kind of plan around it, which is a bit easier.
Yeah, and I think there probably will be some people watching who don't know what the Witan is, and it comes from an old, I think, Yorkshire word for a meeting of kings, a meeting of sort of tribe leaders, to plan and to have debate and make decisions together. And I think it's supposed to be the sort of embodiment of the idea of the network of tens, where it's not just a meetup to drink and have a good time, but it's actually supposed to be an exchange of ideas and a networking event where people who are of a similar mindset can form friendships and sort of business contacts to strengthen our cause, I suppose, and to decide what our cause even is. And so I want to hear from you about this last one. I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, for childcare reasons. I don't want to entrust my children to people who they don't trust or don't really want to be with, and unfortunately, our usual babysitters were not available. So I think we made the right choice, but I'm still a little bit disappointed. Having a husband and wife pair both wanting to go to the event means that there's no one left holding the baby.
Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to hear about it from you, and then after you give us a little rundown, I think we want to talk a bit about possible plans for future events and how we might incorporate some new elements into the Witan. So, just for starters, I heard that there was a disco at the Witan this year. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. Yes, it was quite something, I have to admit. What day was that on? I've got the schedule here. The Cathedral Social was at around 9:30, as usual with these events. The timings were on and off slightly by, you know, about 10 minutes. Apart from that, I have to admit they were very good with the timings. But there was a disco. It was I think the only gripe I would say was it was a little bit too loud.
I often
But
find that.
I think that the reason for that was that everyone was sat outside. So they flung all the doors open, they flung all the windows open, and the main sort of event room, you could barely stand in it. It was rather loud, but I think that's because they wanted the music to be heard from outside, which it was. It was a good plan. They
Was
were.
the music good?
It was good. I feel like everyone needed it in a way, because you know it was Saturday night. We'd all had a very long day of listening to some quite intense speeches. Very very good speakers this year. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I did.
tell us about the speakers, because Morgoth was there,
It
David
was.
Distributist, Oren McIntyre, lots of people who I haven't seen speak before, who I'd really like to
Yeah.
see.
I mean, start with Morgoth, as you said him first. I mean, his speech was not as long as the others, but that was mainly due to the fact that he was quite late on Sunday. He was the second to last speaker, actually. But he got straight to the point, which I absolutely loved. He was straight to the point. You know, this is this, and it was brilliant. And I don't want to say too much regarding what they spoke
No, that's
about, because
fine.
obviously it's in the book. So they will be
Yeah.
publishing another book from the event this year. Skyldings will be publishing that one. So yeah, Morgoth was fantastic. He's got a brilliant accent as well, which I absolutely love, which just really helps helps with the overall speech giving, I think. Who else did you mention? Dave, yeah, Dave. He was brilliant as well. I mean, I can say the names of the talk. Sure, I think that will
Yeah,
be
should I
okay.
say the theme of the event was against entropy?
Yes.
Do you think the
Yes.
speeches were on topic?
I'd say 3/4 of them were. I think there were a couple that, as with the other two Witan events, kind of spoke themselves around the topic, if that makes sense. So they were
Yeah.
linked, but they weren't directly about the topic, which I think is a good thing, actually, to give a bit of variation, so you're not listening to the same thing, because that's the last thing you want, is
True.
all these brilliant speakers talking about the same thing.
Sure.
So yeah, going back to our lovely Dave, his was called "What I Saw from the Colonies," and I think by the end of it, the main comments that I was hearing from the attendees was that we all felt sorry for him, because he was basically saying, you know, he doesn't know where his home is. He doesn't know where he belongs. He's from America, for those who aren't aware, and you know that became very apparent. You know, as being from English, being from England, being an Englishman or Englishwoman, you know, I can trace my bloodline back thousands of years. Whereas, you know, Dave was sat there and openly saying, you know, I can't do that, and I don't know where I belong. So it was, you know, sort of about finding your belonging, which I thought was quite apparent.
Yeah, I think it's a many such cases situation where there is so much sort of colonizing and also mixing of heritage going on all over the world, and some people like you and I can find our identity in being British, being English, and being from our own particular sort of region. Being well, I'm without divulging where I'm from, I identify more as English, but there are people who simply can't derive their identity from that, and they just have to either choose sort of one of their parentages, or just identify as an individual and say, like, this isn't part of my identity. It's not a place or a heritage. It's just me, and that's my identity, as being a sort of rootless hermit. Spiritually.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to that, and that was very apparent throughout the whole weekend, I think. Before I go back to some of the speakers, The main thing I noticed this year was it was lovely seeing some old faces, but there were quite a few new faces as well, which is always good to see. I feel like there were less Americans this year. There seemed to be a wider range of nationalities. If
Was
I can
Radlib there?
recall,
Sorry, you just mentioned Americans, and
no,
Radlib
he
was there
wasn't.
last year.
No, Radlib wasn't there this year.
Mm.
Yeah, there was quite a few who weren't there, and then actually it was sort of this select few who were, and we all ended up sort of sitting on the same table of those who have been to all the events, which ended up being quite amusing and ended up backing each other up throughout the weekend and running away occasionally. But yeah, it was nice to see a large, I want to say a larger group of faces, if that makes sense. Less people that I know, because in some ways that kind of shows us that we are moving forward. We are reaching more people. The more people want to listen in and have their own opinion and contribute,
I think I
which is
would
always
like to see more regulars. To the
yeah,
point that I would consider urging the organisers to give a small discount to people who've been before to encourage sort of people to keep
yes,
going. Like I said, I
yeah,
think the networking effect is important, and this whole network of tens theory comes down to the idea that it's not the number that matters, like the number of people who are there or the number of people who are subscribing to these ideas, but it's the coordination that we're really trying to emphasize, because
yeah.
that without coordination, numbers don't mean anything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it was good to see the same faces, but yeah, I completely agree with what you say, Po. There's so much getting loads of new faces in, but at the end of the day, we want to make links. We want to push forward. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reminds me of when you get like a new employee at work, you've almost
Mm.
got to start over and teach them something new instead of being able to progress on what you already know.
Sure.
Um,
Uh, we got a super chat from DRT. Thank you very much. He wants to know who was the best speaker of the event. Just no umming and ahhing. You can only choose one. Who was the best?
oh, that is going to be difficult. Honestly, I think it's between two of them.
I'll go on then.
I,
You
I
can
do
choose.
think it's between maybe three. Maybe three. That's gonna be very difficult. It was can I say three? Can I say three?
Say two. Come on.
Say two.
Three's greedy. Just go ahead and say it.
I feel like one of them's like they're gonna yell at me.
Honorary
Um
mention.
okay, I'll go for the first one who stuck out the most, I think, who really engaged the audience, and I don't know where on earth he got his energy from. Was probably Fendaviliers. I can't say his last name very well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the artistic arms race, and that was a fantastic talk. He didn't have a script either, which made it even more amazing to my little brain. Was he was just wandering up and down at the front and just talking, but it was a case of you wanted to know what he wanted to say, what he was saying, and he had no script. He'd return to the podium maybe once or twice between the hour speech just to sort of check where he was. Second to that, it's very close between two, but I think one of them has been mentioned before and was at the first event. But I will have to go actually with a new speaker this year, and that was Johann Kurtz, about self-sacrifice. Now he actually used quite a lot of personal experiences, but they were personal experiences that I think a lot of us could resonate with. We all kind of felt where he was coming from. And it was very much a case of he was explaining that he had children young, and I won't go too much into detail, but saying it's brilliant if as a man, speaking from a man's point of view, if you want to start your family and everything, and have X amount of children. So I think this is great for a women's hour topic someday. Just his speech. I have to review his speech.
Good idea.
But he was kind of touching on a little bit on last year's Actually, I think it was the first year's event. Sorry, that was titled "Where Do We Go From Here,"
Mm-hmm.
which made it very, very interesting. And he was another one who he was very good at engaging the audience and kept you listening. So yeah, they were probably both the two I remember the most, I have to admit. I did manage to go to I have to confess, and I think you are fully aware of this, Poe, that the last two Witan events I have had to duck out, either during the middle of the day on a Saturday, just to go and have a snooze.
Mm-hmm.
It is quite intense for anyone who has been to the event, and for anyone who wishes to go, it is intense. I will advise you to drink all the coffee that is given to you.
How
I
was
only
the coffee,
missed
by the way?
the coffee was okay. It was a case of the event to the venue. The venue was lovely, but I think we were kind of had a mismatch of between the two. So we'd want the food from the first venue, but placed in this venue. The food was definitely nowhere near as good as the first venue, unfortunately. But the staff were all really lovely. Everybody was very, very nice. And the venue was, it was lovely. It had its own gardens. It had an Italian sunken garden, so it was quite a nice place to catch up in the evenings as well and talk to people. It was a very nice setting.
I want to get onto that. Put a pin in that. I just want to mention that I always wonder at these events, what do the staff think is going on, and what do they think about it? Because on the
Yeah,
one hand, there's a lot of a lot of beliefs held by the speakers and by the attendants that would be considered in the mainstream to be very extreme. But
yeah,
on the other, all of the speeches are usually on quite in-depth kind of what do you call it, quite esoteric topics that
yeah,
aren't directly, they wouldn't talk about like, oh, the Conservative Party or the Labour
yeah,
Party.
absolutely. I think,
It's all about these really interesting ideas and not just sort of
yeah,
banging on the drum of
I do think
immigration
one thing
or
in,
stuff that normally is recognized as being explicitly political often doesn't
yeah,
actually come up that much.
yeah, on that note, I do think that this year's event was actually less political than the past two,
Mm.
purely because those things weren't even mentioned. And the topics of the talks were either, personal experiences, personal beliefs. Um, I mean, there was barely any mention of Evola, for instance, or
The
Spengler.
octopus, did the octopus get a mention?
I don't think the octopus did get a mention.
Mm.
AA's speech was getting mentioned quite a lot throughout the weekend in other people's speeches, which
Mm.
can only make me think the other speakers were tweaking their speeches,
Yeah, of course.
but just before they went on stage.
Well,
But
that's the idea, a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a few. You could definitely tell. I mean, the ones who had spoken for the first time this year, um, I don't think anyone came across as nervous, which was good. As I have seen some speakers in the past and they've not been able to sort of deliver their point across, or there's a bit of waffling going on.
Mm.
But no, I don't. None of them did that. They were all. I have to give credit to every single one of them. Actually, they were all. The only one I didn't see was is it L. Loren or Laren, who is a male, by the way,
I'm not familiar.
not a female. I wasn't sure who that was. I came in sort of last minute, because as usual the checkout time clashed with the first talk
Of
on
course,
Sunday.
of course.
Um,
Were there any female speakers this year? Not that we're equal opportunity. What do you call it? We're not, we're not a
there were
token
not.
minority.
No, there were no female speakers this year. I mean, there was a bit of a joke in the first event that there were more men called Alex than there were women. I think
Same for this one, I think.
we slightly went back to that. Yes, there were
Yeah.
definitely. Well, actually, I don't think it was Alex's this year. I think it was Matt's. There were a lot of Matts this year.
Mm.
So I think there was more men called Matt than there were women.
So-
But I did meet some new women. So
New women,
I think
women.
that's in our favour. I met some new women. Very interesting characters, I have to admit. If they are listening, because 2 of them said they do listen to us. So if you are listening, then please pop us a message. I want to say hello because I never caught your. I never caught the. Sorry.
I was saying, please, anyone watching this, please do get in touch, either to be on the show or just to be a known person. I'd like to create a network of female tens, either in person, ideally in person, but also just to get sort of contact details and just be aware of each other. I think would be helpful.
Absolutely.
So what I want to know about the event is one, the socializing aspect, which I think is not insignificant. The sort of chit chat between speeches, the sort of socializing time, the disco we already discussed. But this stuff is all important for creating networks. But and to discuss the ideas that were on the stage, the ideas often get carried off the stage as well. But quickly before that, any notes on Unpopular Opinions live? I saw there were pork pies consumed on stage.
Yes. That was quite amusing.
Don't reveal too much of the magic, because I know that there's a kind of element of like what happens at the Witan stays at the Witan.
Oh yes, very much, especially with Unpopular Opinions live, as we are well aware.
We've had a kind of an edgy track record with that show.
We have, yes. I did have a couple of comments passed in my direction, which were definitely just jokes. Along the lines of "women are banned from Unpopular Opinions live," only specifically from the Witan. Oh, yeah. They obviously they had the pork pies. They rated pork pies, and that was I believe it was Morgoth that went on a massive rant over the Christmas party
about the jelly. Yes,
last year about the jelly and the pork pies. So they were expecting maybe 4 or 5 pork pies, and Maven Politic, is it?
Yeah, the organizer.
One of the organizers, yeah. He decided to come out with this giant bag full of pork pies, and there was a good 8-12 pork pies in there. So most of it was taken up with that, which was actually quite amusing and quite a nice way to kind of kick off the evening just after dinner, because we'd just been yapping at dinner. So just to have this really easy, laughable thing to both look and listen to was actually quite welcome. In terms of the opinions, there weren't many. What was quite nice though is they tried to wrap it up quite quickly. They didn't want it to go on too late. Regarding it had gone on a little bit later than usual anyway. And we had the cathedral social, or the disco on afterwards. Not that anybody was dancing. I noticed nobody was dancing. There was a couple of feet tapping and head bobbing. But
what's the point of the music then?
I don't know. I think it was quite this year was 1,000 times more relaxed than the past 2. We still had some really good discussions with people. Good connections were made, but it all just seemed a lot more relaxed, almost like there was a weight off our shoulders. And I think the kind of upbeat attitude and having the music on really helped with that. And just keeping things just a bit more positive.
Yeah, what I would like to suggest, if the organisers are open to suggestions, and it seems like they are,
yes,
instead of a disco, I would like to do live music, kind of like a music hall, beer hall, kind of chummy, kind of sing along, jaunty music, where where everyone can get involved, sort of shouting and singing, joining in.
Bit of down our way, Poe. We call that a jam session.
Yeah, that sounds a bit too kind of
sort of anyone can. I didn't say hello to him, unfortunately, but there was a gentleman there with a guitar. Again, if you're listening, please make yourself known. It was lovely walking past you on, I think it was Friday evening, not Monday, wrong day completely. On Friday evening, outside, and he was just sat there playing acoustic guitar, and it was lovely.
Yeah. Live music just has something special about it, where there's a connection going on between the musicians and the audience. It's just special, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely more inclusive, isn't it? Especially with songs that everybody knows. I mean, I feel like I need to bring the sea shanties and the mining songs.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like a kind of, not quite a sea shanty, but a kind of.
Oh no, we've got to get those sea shanties in there, though.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. So, any other mentions about the socializing? For 2 years in a row, I believe there have been a very small group of people who've stayed up all night drinking until they start serving breakfast.
Yes. There were a few, as usual. There were a few, but there was no misbehaviors this year. There wasn't. I didn't really notice. I think there was only one or two people where you give a little bit of a twitch if they say a couple of things, and everyone else around you is thinking the same thing. But otherwise, no. Everyone was, as far as I'm aware. I hope I'm not being glazed over by this, but then again, if I didn't hear you or see anything or see the aftermath, then that might be a good thing. Our room was also on the bottom floor, so we could hear everything. There were a few on Saturday night who I do recall they actually stayed up until 7 a.m. And then sort of re-emerged at lunchtime. But they were all...
I think it's a shame when they're not able to see the speeches. I don't want to come down too hard on people who just want to have a good time, but when it's actually interfering with the intellectual content of the...
as we know, all of the Sunday's always a rough one, whether you've got a hangover or whether you're just physically and mentally exhausted over the weekend, because as I said earlier, it is full on. It's constant speeches, and then between the speeches there's discussions about the speeches, over lunch, over dinner, it's discussions. And
it's engaged brain the whole time.
It's engaged brain all the time, which, I'm giving myself credit that I only missed one speech this year. But I have to admit, when we stayed at Alex's parents on Sunday night, and when we got back, I couldn't speak. There were no words. I just couldn't. My brain just stopped.
I'm glad we did the recap now. And I don't know if you saw, AA was on Lotus Eaters with Carl and with the winner of
on Monday.
Would You Wed, Dan Tubb, all-time most marriageable man.
Yes, that was not mentioned over the weekend, which I think
they're all chatting off their hangover together.
Yes, they were, especially Carl. I have to admit, Mr. Benjamin. He was suffering on Sunday.
But before we wrap up, I know you've probably got loads to say, but I just wanted to keep this quick tonight because, like I said, I'm on holiday. And as we were saying before the stream started, there's nothing more tiring than being on holiday. So I want to talk to you about something. Is there something you said about Maven, who was interested in running some kind of activity or sort of parallel event for wives and children, or maybe just the wives?
Absolutely. So
the spouses who are, couples who are both interested in the ideas don't have to have one being left behind. I know that the wife of the distributist really would have liked to come this year, but you can't bring a child to this kind of event. It's just not.
And yourself, Poe, of course.
Yes, and me, yeah.
Absolutely. I think this all stemmed from a discussion that we had kind of in the Women's Hour chat, of having a separate event altogether. So forget about the Witan for a moment, but a separate event altogether where we had all the women come together and just have a general catch up, have a chat, and just kind of get to know each other more as well. Which are basically
very much
like weaving sort of
a social, possibly crafty.
So in regards to the Witan, this kind of idea of having the meetup of the women got spread so far, which I'm sure you'll be glad to hear this, Poe, that I had a couple of gentlemen come up to me throughout the weekend asking about a women's event. And the only reason they don't come to the Witan is because they see it as a mainly male-orientated space, which, as we know, it is. It always has been. But, it was a case of, I can only tell them so much. I can only stand here and say, oh, just bring them along, it's fine. But not everybody is comfortable with that, and I completely understand that. It took me 3 years to get comfortable within this. This. So I completely agree with that. So there was more discussions going on, and I spoke to Maven as well, And he had also heard through the grapevine about a women's event, or a family-friendly event running alongside or being the Witan itself. So Maven, so Scaldings, the team at the Witan are definitely all for this. They are supporting us all the way in terms of, they could help us organize such event, or actually have the Witan itself having either a family-friendly space so that the wives and children can come along, and it means they can actually take part in the weekend as well. But I think a really important thing to bring up about the whole Witan event and having women and children there, or partners and children, but however it goes these days, is that, and again, I've had some of the Scaldings team agree with me on this, and some of the speakers agree as well, was that having your family essentially in the same room, or having other people's families in the same room, gives you more of a sense of responsibility. And it gives you a sense of, okay, we are serious here. Let's, be careful what we're saying, which we should be anyway, especially in events like these, in terms of language and certain words that are used. And it would bring it closer to home in a way. And some of the speakers were very much alongside this idea in some of their speeches this year of, this is our country, but this is your home sort of attitude. So actually having your family come along means that they can also engage. They can also have those opinions that a lot of them were actually saying, the gentleman that came to see me, that they've either watched Women's Hour, or they've followed us on Twitter, or they've heard about us from previous events.
Sorry, just addressing the chat here. This comment kind of sums up how I feel that the women's space. I'd like to see women attending and getting involved, but never to kind of dilute what the men are doing and try to make it more female friendly.
I think the main point I heard over the weekend at the event was that the men coming up to me were saying, is there any way that they can talk to you, or that they can engage with these events without me, trying to tell her just to come along? I said, yes, of course. I said, well, they can join the women's side of this sphere, because as we've discussed before, men and women are biologically different. We have different thought patterns. But constantly, I heard more than once over the weekend, was the men saying, I go home and, my wife or my girlfriend or whatever were agreeing with what I was saying, or they were giving their input and giving their opinions on the various speeches and discussions had over the weekend. So they are fully aware that those women can engage in the Witan event, but they just don't know how to go about it. And as you say, we don't want to dilute the population, as we were. We know it's a male-orientated space. It is now, I'd say, down to the men who want their women to attend, because they know they've got the same views and attitudes towards what we are talking about, what our common ground is at these events.
I've been thinking about this since you brought that up, and about Maven, and I think I've been to religious, like Christian retreats, where it's not unlike the Witan in the sense that there's there's people meeting there, there's there's sort of worshipping together, and there's sort of workshops, all kinds of Christian oriented activities.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there's a kind of splitting off where you can go to, there's this room, they're going to be doing this, and there's another room where they're going to be doing this. And if you want to go see the speech, if you want to go see the speeches, then men and women are all welcome. But then there's also going to be another room where they are, I don't know, like maybe they're learning a dance, or they're preparing, they're getting the children to perform a play of a sort of classic English folktale, or they're making a quilt, or maybe there's different rooms where they're all doing all these things.
I think it's very important to find the happy sort of level in this, finding the correct balance with all of this, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the men. I think I'm expecting the comments to go absolutely mental now. I'm just sat here stirring the pot. You know, there are things discussed at the event which I will not mention here. But putting it very bluntly, you know, it does come down to home. It does come down to those around you, and you know what you want out of life, not what your neighbor wants. You know, what do you want? What do you want to keep going? What are you happy with? What are you not happy with? You know, and these things are very important. And I'm very sad you missed the event this year, actually, Poe, because there were quite a lot of the men speaking about family. And you know, coming up to myself and wanting their family to be there. And it was quite sort of humbling that they were coming up to me and saying, you know, I'd love to bring my wife and kids along to this, but you know, how could we make this work, sort of attitude. And I think
what I
we
want
can.
to know is, what do you have to say to, you know, I don't really know women. I don't really know what they like. Like, I want to know, what's the activity that if you just say, oh, we're going to be weaving baskets, like they go, yeah, like I want to come to that. That sounds good. Like, what's the thing that you say that'll get women
I
interested?
mean, it's a difficult one. I do think it's a difficult one. I would go with the traditional things, but that's just me, because that's the sort of thing I would do. Honestly, I would treat it more as you know, the event itself is a learning opportunity. You know, that's how I see it. I'm there to learn about what, you know, the speakers are going to teach me. So in terms of the women, I would see that as a learning opportunity. If each woman can bring something to the table, so let's say, you know, one teaches us how to knit, one teaches us how to bake, one's teaching us how to do gardening, you know, all these things together. Or if someone's got a specific interest on, I don't know, geography, you know, that can really bring a group of people together, especially if there are children around. You know, these are family friendly activities. And as we've said, you know, it's getting that happy balance, that happy medium. And, you know, we still have the social evenings, you know, at night when the kids have gone to bed. You can still go out and enjoy, you know, the event as it is. We're not saying, you know, if you come along, you're going to be segregated from everybody else. That's not what we're saying. We want everybody to mingle comfortably so that we know that the children are safe in this environment, the families are safe in this environment, you know. So I do think we can do it. And the fact that we've had so much support from the previous event and so many comments and so many people coming up to me, and just asking general questions, you're like, when is this going to happen? How can we do it? What's the next step? And I'm going to put it out now, Poe, and I will put it on my Twitter as well. If anyone does have any ideas or can help in any way, then please do let us know. You know, if you know the next step forward in doing this, because it is a big feat. And as we've said, we've got Scalding's team on our side with this. They do believe it's going to be a great help towards the main event. So in any way that we can kind of help each other is going to be brilliant, you know, and it expanding everything.
Sorry, this is slightly off topic. Have you seen a video? I think I've shared it years ago, of a bunch of Scottish women all taking in turns to pound this wool into a fabric.
Is it
kind of very manual process?
Is it on a table and are they singing a song?
Yeah. So
right,
if in my personal
I will
opinion,
tell you now, Poe, that is that started in the Hebrides, and it's the really thick wool. So because it's so thick, it has to be woven out by hand, and that's what they used to weave into the traditional tartans.
yes,
So yeah, it's a very traditional sort of way of doing things. To be honest, they don't have to do it, but there is a sense of pride in still doing something by hand.
there's probably a machine that does it now, but that's the kind of thing where I see a bunch of women and they're all singing a song that they've sung for, you know, for their whole lives, that they've learned as children, and they're doing this, they're having this craft together, and they're all in unison. That makes me want to do that.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know if that's my personal opinion or if like women are just into that.
No, I think, to be honest, everyone's into that. I mean, one of the speeches over the weekend was about, you know, leaning on traditions. and where have the traditions gone? And if anyone who does follow me on Twitter knows that myself and Alex went to, it was a festival. However, this is not like any festival you've ever known. It was on based in an old Victorian port and copper mine, which I also used to work at the very young age of 14 years old. Not in the mines, I have to admit. Just to clarify, I was not down the mines. But the whole weekend consisted of sea shanties, mining songs, everybody getting together, having a drink, having a good time, and we all helped each other out. And it was all very much what I remember growing up, you know, having those songs that as soon as you hear the first note, you know every single word to that song, you know all the dances, and that's something we need to hold on to. And if there's any way that myself or anybody else can teach that to other people, then that, you know, absolutely, I will bring that to the next event.
Whether it's a song or a craft or something, I'd love to resurrect a lost tradition of,
yes,
you know, whether it's Scotland or England. You know, we have some fraternity there.
Well, I cover both
something
bases
from
there,
our British Isles. I'd love to get a tradition resurrected. That's I'm not going to learn Welsh. That's too hard. I want to do something a bit easier than that.
I'm not going that far. Well, I cover two bases. My mother is Scottish and my dad is from Devon. So, and I now live in Cornwall.
You can't make cheese or anything. Like, nothing too messy. But
I can make cheese. Cheese is quite easy to make once you know how.
I think I've tried it once. Made a kind of cream cheese. I don't know how many times you have to do that to get it to like a hard cheddar.
It takes a while. I mean, just before we came on, I was on about preparing all the apples. So I mean, there's still a lot of things I still do very traditionally, and it is because I have a sense of pride in doing it, and it makes me happy.
Shield Maiden was at the. Did you talk to her? She's been on the show,
right? She needs to tell me who she was. Which one were you? What color was your hair? I know that sounds ridiculous, but I spoke to so many people. To be honest, I don't. Were you blonde? I need to know. I need to know. Yeah. Tell me what you look like. Send me a message. I spoke to a couple of women over the weekend, and they all told me their first names, which of course is great. But then I have no idea who you are.
Call of the Shield Maiden is Charlotte.
Ah, yes, I did meet you, Charlotte. You were lovely. I saw you doing archery as well. You need to tell me about that. Why was there someone doing archery? That was very random.
If we can do archery, we should do that. But I think if we do something too cool, I mean, going to want to do it as well.
If there were some of the attendees doing archery in the field, then absolutely we can do something else. It was lovely to meet you, Shield Maiden, if not very briefly, running past each other. But yes, yeah. I think it's definitely doable. But yes, if anyone has any ideas, please let us know. But we are going to try and do something. If it is not alongside Witan, I think there is something we can do. So
let's do it. And let's get some ideas. But for tonight,
let's start this ball rolling. But for now, I'm gonna go and bag up all the apples that are sat on my stove stewing and go to bed because
nice. Let's do it. Just one of those days. Happy 100 episodes, everyone. Happy
100. Where did that time go?
Yeah, well, you did a good old stint, didn't you, for a while, keeping it going?
I did. I don't know how. I think that was on AA's channel as well. It was just a case of, right, I'm going to have to make something up here.
Yeah.
And there was only about 4 of us in the Women's Hour chat. Whereas I like that idea, Pepe sweater knitting. If somebody can teach me how to knit, that would be great. I tried it at the last event. I tried to do a straight line and it turned into a triangle. So let's do it. Let's crochet. Do it. I'm terrible at crochet.
But here's to another 100 episodes. Let's see if we can get it going for another, what was that, 2 years?
Absolutely. I have to admit, I will say hands down to you and anybody who is listening, thank you for all the support. And Poe, you've been absolutely fantastic keeping this going. We have a brilliant team now, a great group of ladies behind the scenes, constantly in the chat. I am amazed at some of the comments they come out with. So yeah, brilliant work from everyone.
And of course, the first Witan was the originator of this.
It was.
My speech was so unorthodox and controversial. We had to have our own show.
Well, I loved it, Poe. I loved it.
Thanks. Best Witan speech ever, but I've never been invited back as a speaker. Too controversial. Then I'm too hot for them.
That's what it was. You were just too good. Too good.
Yeah, we should do the more witch burnings. We used to do that.
We did.
We'll bring it back
I
for
feel like
next
people enjoy
Mondays.
it. Bit of nostalgia.
All right. Have a good week, Birdie. Have a good weekend.
And you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Now
Good
get
night,
out.
all.